I have worked together for really 28 years since then. But that's how we met. And the point of the story is you just never know who you're going to meet, when you're going to meet, and how it can completely change your life. So you always want to stay open. You always want to so embrace the situation, because you just never know who you're going to meet. So I was fortunate enough, you thought about that, on the Thursday before that Friday, I quit my job, didn't know what the hell I was going to do, made some money at Vegas, and wound up meeting a guy who gave me the opportunity to build a firm and where we are today. So who would have thought?
When did Pat join?
He joined about 8 years later.
Yeah.
We all have to go to Vegas more often.
It's just amazing who you can meet. Now, it's interesting, I've obviously had a lot of conversations with him. I asked him, why me? Why were you attracted to me? He goes, a couple reasons. One, you were confident. Think about it. You were willing to take my chips and buy my chips, and you didn't know who the heck I was. And you were not only confident, but you believed in yourself. And I think those two attributes were what he was looking for. And then we had a variety of mutual friends, so he was able to determine, where I'd gone to school, how I'd done in school, and that sort of thing. So he just felt I was the right one to help him start this investment firm that he had been functioning on his own, but to really institutionalize it. And it's just, it's amazing the way things happen. So you might be at an event like tonight. You might be at a party. You just never know who you're going to meet. And I think at the end of the day, it really highlights. It's not what you know, but it really is who you know. It is really who you know that determines where you go in life. And the key, I think you guys are hitting on it here. It's just not knowing somebody randomly, not just knowing this much about them, but it's really about knowing a few number of people and knowing them very well. Because if you know them superficially, they don't think of you, they don't recommend you. It's really about knowing them well enough so when the moment comes that your name should be chosen, that it will be chosen. So I've had a very fortunate life. I still live here in Westwood. As Frankie mentioned, I got 3 great kids. One's in college, one's a senior in high school, one's a sophomore, or 8th grader. They all play volleyball, which actually is a much better sport than tennis for a number of reasons. I like it a lot better. It's a team-oriented sport rather than an individual sport, which is what tennis is. I wouldn't trade my history of playing tennis, because I don't think I ever could have been as good in volleyball as I was at tennis, but volleyball is really, I actually enjoy that a lot more than tennis. So I've been very fortunate, both in family, work, sports, and other things. Nice to know Kent when he was about 8 years old, and I'll just leave it at that.
But, I think, you said something that I thought was really interesting, and you really emphasized what I think is a great point about this concept of being open. And I'm just curious that you had that attitude when you met Dick at the crafts table. How do you maintain that today in terms of the way you do your business, for example, or something like that, or just generally in terms of your attitude?
Let me tell you briefly what we do, and I think that openness will help, or that question can help with that. What we do is we invest in companies. We own 15 firms today. Together they do about $1 billion in sales. They are typically in healthcare, business services, or government services. So these are typically $100 million firms. Most of them here in California, some are in the East Coast, some are in Indianapolis, or some are in the Midwest. So we wind up coming in contact with a number of different investment opportunities. So we have to always be open to realize we don't know everything. We know a little bit, but we have to realize that every situation is different, every entrepreneur is different, every competitive situation is different. And it gives us an opportunity to learn all the time. And when we invest in a firm, it's really more like a marriage. They have to want us as a partner. We have to want to believe in them that they can go someplace. So we have to be able to adapt to them, be able to work with them. You can't come in with any preconceived notions of how you're supposed to be. So and basically, every day we have to be open. We have to be willing to learn. We have to be willing to change. And I think the more open you are, the more willing to change you are, the more you learn, the better you'll become. So it's part of our daily life, every day.
Keith?
We let me ask a question? Or you-
Absolutely, no, please. Yeah.
How do the two parts relate in terms of the investment banking that you're talking about and the foundational work that Dick obviously does?
Okay, we're not an investment bank, though. An investment bank basically helps people raise money. The difference is we actually invest our own dollars, so we are actually the principal. We basically funded that foundation for years. Until 2000, for 18 years, the primary source of our funds was Reardon's Capital, and we would make money and he'd give it away. We'd make money and he'd give it away. But then in 2000, we got tired of that. It's a little difficult to build a corpus. And so at that point, we actually raised money from the outside for the first time. So our limited partners are firms like Wells Fargo, Mutual of Omaha, State of California. You would know every single firm who's an investor in our firm today.
One thing that might be helpful for everyone here is some general principles on how you evaluate a business and maybe the people involved in it.
Okay. When we invest, it's all based on probabilities. It's based on odds. And
Crap.
I want to be on the casino side now.
there's a little bit to that. There really is, because you want to invest where the odds are in your favor. And it's not only how you invest, but I think it's actually how you run your life. It's how you pick your friends. It's what business you want to be in. In sports, as you all know, odds are incredibly important. And how you play the odds, when you play the odds, but you always want the odds in your favor. So in business, in investing, we take the same approach. So the first thing we look for, because any business is made up of people, we look for the people involved. So very simply, we look for people who have been successful. Let's just start there. We'll probably get approached by 500 to 750 firms a year. And in each approach we receive, there's a business plan, a document that describes the firm. And the first thing we do is just forget what they do, forget who they compete with, forget what their financial results are. Well, let's just look at who they are and what they have done. And based on how they describe themselves, the resumes that they're in there, it's probably 70% a decision whether we go forward or not. And what's interesting is the more they have to talk about themselves in their bios, the less they have done. I heard a great story one time that it was a radio announcer, and he was talking about who should get in the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame. And he basically made the comment, if you have to make more than 2 statements or 2 sentences about the individual, he can't get in. So for Barry Bonds, you may not approve or agree with how Barry ran his life, but he said about Barry, well, he was the greatest hitter for 15 years, and no one else has had the on-base, whatever the statistic was. It was just obvious by the one statement that Barry Bonds deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. And then he described another player, a very good player, but he had to keep talking about what they did to get enough information about them. So we apply the same standard. We look for what those individuals have done, what companies they've run, how successful they have been, and that's where we start. So that's the number one thing we look at. The second thing we look at is what is the growth potential of the firm. So we invest in what we call growth industries. So we look for firms that will have long-term demographic trends that will support their growth. Things that as soon as you actually hear what this company does, you go, got it, I know where they're going to grow. I know where the growth's going to come from. I don't have to fabricate it. I don't have to do a lot of research. It's a pretty apparent fact. And most things today are pretty apparent about what's going to drive growth for the next 10, 15 years. So those are the 2 things we look at. We look at the individual success, and we look at the underlying growth trends or demographics which support that. Those are the 2 main things we look for.
You've done it for a while. Do you have kind of a profile of how many the businesses do very well, how many do average, how many end up failing?
Well, I would say in our portfolio, 35% do exceptionally well. I would say 35%